Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Immigration Nation. I'm Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer, and today is a very, very special topic, one that we've seen in the news a lot, but I don't think we've really felt what is going on, and that is the situation in Afghanistan. We are very, very fortunate to have had the privilege of connecting with a judge who is currently trapped in Afghanistan, in Kabul, who was gracious enough to allow us to tell his story. We've started with a few questions, and then he has provided pre-recorded audio responses, and hopefully you'll get a taste for what's happening over there, and that this isn't just something nice to listen to, but something that will cause us and our government to reach out and help people like him that are left behind and almost forgotten. Now, fortunately today, you guys don't have to listen to me alone. I have one of my good friends and colleagues, Robert Blanshay, who is joining me. Welcome, Robert. How are you?
Thank you, Mark. I'm very well. How are you?
Fantastic. Well, this is a pretty heavy topic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm so grateful that you're doing this show. And as we just discussed a little bit a few minutes ago, hopefully it helps out the justice that is trapped in Kabul.
Yeah, absolutely. So Robert, so you practice immigration law in Toronto. And
I do.
I'm out here in the fine province of Alberta. How did an immigration lawyer in Toronto connect with this fine individual in Kabul?
Sure. Well, it's a great way for this conversation to start. Because it gives me the opportunity to give a shout out to the myriad of different organizations across Canada right now that are working so hard and so diligently for the Afghan people. I'm not going to list them all, but I'm very proud that also the Canadian Bar Association has a pilot, the Pro Bono Initiative, regarding the crisis in Afghanistan. There is a fairly long and growing list of wonderful lawyers that have offered their time and brain power to assist people on a pro bono basis. So this justice, through a myriad of different organizations, found my name, did a little bit of his own research, sent an email to us. We're, as I'm sure so many firms or lawyers in the country that practice in refugee and humanitarian and compassionate areas, refugee law and otherwise. We're just, the emails flooding in from Afghanistan for the past months. So we've got at our firm a whole team and a system of how to triage these. And there are certain ones that come to me only maybe because I'm just older and I've been doing this longer. And also that I wanted to be, if there was an opportunity for an intake consultation, I wanted to be the one to hold it. So that's essentially, I read his email and I fired it off to our next stage with Laura and Brittany, and we connected with him. We run the consultations 24/7. Somebody is able to get secure Wi-Fi access, which is a huge, massive issue right now inside Afghanistan, even in Kabul. Even though the US and Germans are still there, if we need to get up at 3:17 a.m. to meet with somebody, we will. But that's how this justice connected with me.
Yeah, and there's, he is one voice of so many over there. And, as we pull up these questions that we sent him and the responses that he gave, you can just envision this is one individual and their family of countless that are in this situation.
Of course, he's there, if I may, just as a bit of background, he's in Kabul with his parents and a number of siblings. He's got a very unique name, which is pretty identifiable, and is obviously a judge in Kabul. I will, just before we start this, say that one of the things that's jumped out at me in terms of the emails are, vulnerable groups, women, girls, members of the queer LGBTQI community, etc. Also, so many human rights activists, former government supporters, allies of Canada, those that had worked in Kandahar and elsewhere. So You gave the example, there are so many judges, people like this in Afghanistan, to maybe sieve that down even more. There are so many people of his profile inside, not that anyone is more important than the other, but I think you
Right.
know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. All right. Well, while we're here, I want to just bring up a few things for those that are watching live. So we will have a period where we can take some questions from you and to share your thoughts. And if people are personally affected by this and you're watching, we would love to hear from you. But the whole purpose of this is awareness, and awareness that drives action. And so once again, we're so appreciative of the judge who took the time to connect with us, and obviously, is hoping that something positive from this will come. So let's see what we can do. How does that sound, Robert?
Perfect.
Okay. So what we're going to do here is, it's like I said, it's a series of questions. So, if he could be here, we'd have him with us. We'd have him
And
telling his
maybe,
story.
so sorry, Mark, maybe we should just explain the questions were created by Mark and myself.
Mhm.
If people are interested in how they emanated, I don't know if you're going to get there, Mark. So
Yep.
not too
Yep.
many,
Yep.
but that's where they come from.
Yep. Exactly. So we formulated those and we sent those off to him, and then he found a quiet place with Wi-Fi, and I was really amazed. And you can see right away, this is an extremely intelligent, accomplished professional who has for years devoted his life to the betterment of his country. And in one fell swoop, almost from night to day, his whole world shifted. And so let's just jump right into the questions, and we'll go question by question, and then Robert and I will talk a little bit about this and the answers. And I think you're really, really going to enjoy this. Now, with respect to like I said, the questions today, it's all about this humanitarian crisis that exists in Afghanistan. And so the questions that are connected to that, we will pull them on and we'll address them. Those of you who are used to watching these lives and having me answer questions about everything related to immigration, we're not going to cover those today. We did another earlier session today. And so understand that you're important. You all are important. But today it's all about the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. Okay. All right, Robert, let's jump into the first question. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So it's pretty simple. Tell us first about yourself. Actually, I'll restart that, get the audio right here. Here we go.
I'm an Afghan judge who worked over years in a primary district court in a remote part of Afghanistan. The district of my court's jurisdiction was fully under the control of Taliban, and I had to operate from the center of that province, from a tiny office, and provide judicial services to the public. We judges lost hundreds of our fellow judges in the past years of war, and because we were in the softest target of assassinations, car explosions, hostage takings, and torture by the Taliban and other criminal groups. After the takeover of the country by the Taliban, that fear of losing life never faded away, but on the contrary, it increased in full extent.
So one of the things that stood out most to me, Robert, with that response was the fact that he said even before they pulled out, his life was constantly in danger, and many of his colleagues were. And
Right.
so the work that he was doing has always been work that has caused elements of danger to himself and to his family.
Of course.
And so
Well,
this is someone who's a champion who's been fighting for principles of justice and compassion all his life.
right. Well, I mean, look around the world and look at what we just experienced south of the border with different regime prior to this one, and different, democracies, Hong Kong, Belarus, Ukraine, the list goes on and on. So Afghanistan, these are the people that first and foremost are going to keep Afghanistan as it should be, a free and democratic, proud. Afghani people are, just immensely proud, but equally important. And here's the shameful part. I mean, there's just no other two ways around this. I mean, shame, shame, shame on, countries such as ours. In fact, I'm a true blue Canadian, proudest Canadian, trust me, but lots of shame around, all the decades, and no disrespect to the fine people in the Canadian military and others that devoted their lives to helping to rebuild Afghanistan, certainly. But this justice, like many others, were actively and openly encouraged, prodded to remain and stay. You stay, we'll stay. You build, we'll build. It's together. So, we hightailed it out of there, had a federal election, and did a enormous amount of talking. And lo and behold, as we sit here today talking, there's still no open, active pilot or project for those inside the country. So that's, what stuck out to me about this first question was even the fact that he was willing to find a space to even open the recorder and record this from inside the country. So,
yeah, and I agree. This whole issue has become so politicized, and it's all fun and dandy to get votes. But at the end of the day, what are you doing after the fact? What are you doing to actually put rubber to the road? And
sure.
It's been crickets. It really has.
Yeah, I mean, it's politicized to an extent and to a degree by some. Again, going back to my initial shutout, and this is the perfect opportunity. There are so many lawyers, wonderful, hardworking lawyers, fierce advocates across Canada, refugee practitioners, NGOs, many of them. I'm not going to start naming them, not to leave them out, but I will likely forget one, and I don't want to do that. So many NGOs and people in the country that are trying to help. But here's the deal. We're not the government of Canada. And until the government of Canada creates something for those inside, I want to add something before we go to the next question.
Yeah.
Even for Afghan nationals, let's say, that are in the United States, let's say they're in a camp in the States, they've been given humanitarian parole, they might be heading to a credible fear interview, and they make a claim for asylum. Well, you know what? Even if they want to leave the States and come to Canada and claim refugee protection here, they can, because our POEs are closed, and those entering at spots other than POEs are getting direct backs. Yep. So it would be too simplistic to just say this is only about Afghan nationals. Of course, they're at the most at risk, my goodness. But even for Afghan nationals outside the country, it's difficult.
All right. Second question we asked are pretty simple. Where are you now and with whom?
I am in the capital of Afghanistan with my family, living in hiding. Looking at the past behavior of the Taliban towards the judges, and the fact that they released all the convicted criminals from the jails of Afghanistan. And there is not any guarantee that if you get out of home and go public and you are not being targeted or killed.
And there's a reason, Robert, that that we chose this. There are so many groups like you identified that are that are recognized, that are classified as the most vulnerable. Well, I cannot think of a group that does not rank up there as high as judges who have now seen all of the people that have been tried and convicted and and in prison being released. And
once you're central or core branches of the governance or administration of the country start to go, the judiciary, it renders the police and other security forces their charges, even if they're trying to do their jobs, it's rendered meaningless if it can't propel forward to court and charges and convictions or other types of matters. I mean, it's just sort of scratch your head moment around why this can't be done and why we can't help judges and former people that worked at the Canadian Embassy in Kabul, worked with Canadians in Kandahar as interpreters, etc. Yes, it's frustrating would be putting it mildly.
The next question was describe the final days. And I think before we get to the answer, I think we all have our images of the news reports and watching just the chaos that ensued. And I think, there's shock value with those things. But even that shock value, we as a society are so used to that kind of thing. We've become so desensitized, whether it's the media or whatever it is, the movies we watch, and we forget that this is a real thing that's taking place. And the images of people trying to get on the planes when the planes were taking off, these are real human beings. These are real people. It's not just a movie. It's not just, it's real. And so when I think about that, let's listen to this response.
I will describe the final days in 3 words, and that is chaos, hopelessness, and fear. And the whole country is in shock. Schools and universities are shut. Government employees haven't received for 3 months their salaries, are lined in front of the banks to receive $200 weekly. And the people who have worked with the US or other foreign nations that were present in Afghanistan are leaving the country and leaving behind everything they had. The women in the country and the young girls of this country think that they have lost everything. They might never have a chance to study or work outside from their homes, or have a future like any other human being around the world.
What are your thoughts, Robert, on that?
Well, pretty unbelievable to hear this live. To what you said earlier, once you strip away media and a lot of other things going on, and you just listen to someone describing this and just plain talk, it's just pretty eye-opening and just very, very, very challenging and difficult. Again, I'm really, I guess because I've been practicing in this area maybe for 30 years, or maybe I'm like this and it's why I practice in this area. Now for me it's going to sound weird, not the time for emotion or crying, for me, I have, but we just got to hunker down on this. The reality is that he's right. I mean, I really hate to say this, but I'm going to say it because it's so important in terms of the message that we're trying to send. He could be killed before he gets out of the country. And he well knows that. And he appreciates, I think one of the things, the nuances here also is that, things were not exactly like Disney World pre-Taliban in Afghanistan. So, very, very volatile situation, the geopolitics of the region, the Russians bordering Pakistan, all of that. So again, this is why even the pro bono initiative, the lawyers in Canada, this is a CBA initiative. I should have mentioned that the services are also provided in Farsi, Dari, and Pashto. So to those listening now or on the recording, please spread the word. At least we can try to connect Afghan nationals with, experienced immigration lawyers. Once something opens, we're supposed to get cabinet end of month and a new minister or same minister in the new cabinet by October 26th. So, and in terms of what you said earlier about people being complacent and not caring, well, gee whiz, here's what you can do. It'll take you probably a minute or under. You can email your MP, right? You can send an email to your MP and just say you are very concerned about the situation, the crisis in Afghanistan, and you want to see action and why there's not the government of Canada is not doing anything for those inside. Give money. You can make no donation, $1, a toonie, $5 towards a credible organization that is advocating or trying to help in terms of keeping up pro bono initiatives for a myriad of organizations. So there's lots of ways that, people, very busy in their own lives, people, hardworking people, don't have to spend too much time to lend a hand.
Yeah. So the fourth question that we're gonna shift to now is to describe the post-U.S. withdrawal and what was Kabul like during that time.
Right. People were frightened and disappointed. The images of fear and disappointment were fully depicted in the horrifying scenes of Kabul airport. As the young, educated, and aspiring generation of this country felt they have lost everything. Among those who fell off the airplane were a young doctor and a teenage national team football player. That describes everything, I think.
So we all remember what the scene was like. We watched the media, we watched the videos, we watched exactly what he's talking about, the planes taking off, people doing everything they could to clamor on them. He talked about, this chaos and I think he used the word hopelessness, this feeling of just despair that everything that you'd worked for so many years was over. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, there's so many thoughts. Democracy building is very precarious, and you have a lot of actors or players around the world that are dead set against it. You have a very hastily planned, no comment on our friends to the south, but a quite hastily planned exit from Afghanistan with what seems to be little to no to poor information in advance around what was going to go down, and that what measures were being taken urgently to help people leave in a dignified, safe, secure manner. But something else, practicing my refugee practice, I litigate, spent decades on representing refugee claimants and complex ones and humanitarian applications and all that stuff. And almost 30 years, there are certain things when you work with this category, this class of persons. This justice right now, I don't define him as a refugee per se. I would say he's an IDP. He's an internally displaced person. He's not displaced, he's in Kabul, but in any event, he's inside the country, and that's a very important point here. But, for 30 years, almost 30 years, refugees have carried such an unfair, unwarranted, undeserved profile, here. They need from us only, and what are they coming to Canada with, and are they, we know, and in fact, Canadian governments have actively promoted certain stereotypes and stigmas. And here's the deal: a very brilliant, accomplished judge in a country is a refugee. Hopefully, could come to Canada as a refugee. And so, one of the things that I think sticks out to me is how your daily life in this country, you're there again doing dignified work, trying to support democracy, the engagement of women and girls and all members of Afghan society to participate. And overnight, that's all just sort of dropped away from you, and you're now an internally displaced person or a refugee. Your life is in danger, and how rapid that is, and what he's about to face as well when he gets out of the country, and what will be for him. Let's not forget, as he's doing this interview, he's an esteemed judge, etc. But he's in his late 20s, I believe, and he's also got his whole life ahead of him. So that also just can't be lost here. Is just how sad the whole situation is.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to get his thoughts now on the international community's response.
Sure.
Well, the international community's response was not an adequate response. The people of Afghanistan who joined hands in the last 20 years with all the countries that had a presence in Afghanistan to build a future and a prosperous life for themselves and their children now feel they are betrayed and left alone. For the upcoming winter, the people of Afghanistan need urgent help and assistance with humanitarian aid and support. The other vulnerable part of these people who were promised that they were getting out of danger with the help of the international community is disappointed.
I think disappointment's an understatement.
Well, he is being very careful about the words that he's choosing. Quite obviously, there's no doubt he's under self-censorship as well. So we have to bear in mind where he's speaking from. And, he's quite correct. He's putting it in about as polite. I wouldn't put it in those terms as politely as he is. I guess for the viewers and immigration lawyers, the two countries right now that are granting exit visas, entry visas are Pakistan, Tajikistan. There is the opportunity for a TRP if you can, you got to find a visa office like Ankara or any of them in the region, Amman. In any event, you got to find a visa office that can process this and get some type of application in. A TRP seems to be one of them, and then there's hopefully by October 26th, the day after they pull away from Rideau Hall, I hope that immigration minister is gonna get a podium in front of him, her, or other and start announcing effective yesterday pilots for what people can apply for online on a portal. If this judge can access, Wi-Fi talking to us by recording these questions and responses, well, then he can access a portal to file something, to get something started. So
yeah, and the reality is, for most of these people, you still have to find a way to get out of the country.
Well, of course,
and that's the biggest, that's one of the biggest challenges. If you can find a way out, then maybe there's options. While you're in there, those in power are not going to make your life easy even if you do want to leave. And so
yeah, and again, yes, I mean, quite obviously, everybody's, if you can imagine, in a holding pattern. I mean, it's crazy to think that we're in a holding pattern at this stage of the game. I wanted to mention also, in terms of special programs, there is the Refugee Center in Montreal. Lisa Middlemiss mentioned this. They have put together a flow chart or something on special programs for Afghanistan. So again, for lawyers or people in Canada, anyone watching or anywhere, on what they can do now. The Afghanistan special programs, it's Sejong Park with maybe Gomber Dauphin, our fellow warriors at Montreal. So that's just another resource for people, at least if they want to start building something that could then go A24 TRP or A25 HNC or whatever.
So. Yeah. Okay, let's connect in with the last question here, and it's basically his thoughts on Canada's response and what potentially can be done better.
In the initial days of Afghanistan's government collapse, Canada helped those that were in a way employees of Canadian institutions. Canada announced a humanitarian program for Afghans in need, and we are grateful for that. But in the meantime, the humanitarian program failed to consider Afghan judges in much clearer terms as the group in urgent need. Still, the people who are qualified for the program and stuck inside Afghanistan don't know how to apply The program requires to be outside of Afghanistan, registered to UNHCR, and be referred to Canada. First of all, people are stuck inside Afghanistan. No neighboring country issues a visa for Afghan nationals except Pakistan. The office of UNHCR in Pakistan doesn't register or refer Afghans who want to apply for the program. Um, all in all, it seems impossible to receive this help. I sincerely ask for a revision of the procedures if it is supposed to be a helping effort.
So, a revision of the procedures. If you had your way, Robert, what revisions would you make to this process?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh my goodness.
Well, the
I didn't know
biggest
you
thing
could.
is the biggest thing is unless you can get out, you
Well,
really, there are few options available for you.
right. So, you know, one of the things that makes these situations just so egregious is that there's such a lack of data. And whatever data you're getting, it's so fluid and it's moving so rapidly. So, in terms of what I would do, my answer is what day, what time of day are we talking about? What I would have done from the get-go is liaise with the Americans, the Germans, and the Taliban, charter, I don't know, 100 empty old Air Transat or, WestJet Air Canada planes, strip the seats out, get a time zone that the Taliban would allow it, get a portal air window in, and start loading people up. That's what I would do. This is nothing new around the world, people being stuck in countries in the rest of the world, well knowing what's going on, but turning a blind eye or remaining willfully ignorant. So, in any event, what I would do also is I would tell you what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't announce with big fanfare that I was going to increase from 20,000, 40,000 Afghan nationals here. And as of last Friday, I think there were 37,400 spots open still. So, this doesn't assist. It doesn't assist Afghan nationals inside the country to get their hopes up falsely, perilously for no reason. It will divert energy and from other opportunities for them, perhaps. Right? Time is fleeting here. They're not planning a holiday out of the country. So this is the refugee category. So tick, 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 the time goes, but we don't have a minister. We don't really know to whom to talk to about this, to create something. So the machination of our federal government is halted until next week.
Yeah, and you think about him. I remember the one response he said about them being without pay, essentially civil servants,
Right.
government employees for 3 months.
Yeah.
So you
Right.
wonder how are you eating? Like how would we do if we if our line of income and support was just cut off without any warning? And
Well, I
it was even if we had funds in an account, we're fearful for even leaving the house to go to the bank to withdraw money or to get groceries for our family.
right.
And this is
Well,
this is the plight of many who are in these humanitarian crises all over the world. And like
right.
you said, it takes horrific scenes. It takes a little Syrian boy to be washed up on the shores of Turkey. It takes video of people clamoring on airplanes leaving an airport and plummeting to their death to get people's attention, while all these other countries all over the world, there's maybe no less suffering in them, that just
Right.
don't get any notice.
Sure. And what's another, nuance to this or not is that, even the Federal Court of Appeal in an old decision called Yee talked about this, that we have to be careful about viewing this situation in Afghanistan through a westernized lens. So the reality is, unfortunately, that Afghan nationals are all too used to this type of environment in their country, bombs and killings and torture and impunity amongst state security agents. So that also, like, what would I do in that situation, well, the question is, if I was an Afghani judge, well, I'm probably quite used to the environment. I'm probably used to the fact that things can change on a dime. I'm probably pretty smart, probably pretty tough, and probably very committed philosophically in his belief system to his country. I mean, Afghani nationals, it's still their country and very proud to fight for it. And I think we would do the same thing. That's what lawyers do. Something's not working for a client in a file, I don't even inhale.
Yeah.
My belief is, then we try this and then we try that and we keep going and we keep going. It's tenacity and perseverance and the spirit of life and the desire for something better. And the other part of this is that he's traumatized to a certain degree.
Yeah.
So what people are saying, planning, thinking, it's just absolute bedlam and pandemonium. There's no centralized government for them to turn to properly. There's no one information source upon which they could fully rely. You could only imagine that's why the longer this goes, the mental anguish, psychological anguish, it will cause long-lasting damages in that regard too, undoubtedly. So, it's October 21st. We've been talking about this amongst ourselves, you and I, and so many of our fellow warriors. And again, it is what it is until the 26th or afterwards.
Gotcha. Okay, so as we wrap up, Robert, here, I think this has been very, very productive. If you could, and you gave some suggestions earlier in the presentation, but what are your marching orders for people that are watching this who want to do something about this? Can you remind us again some of the things that people can actually do to make a difference versus just, like you said, feeling sorry and shedding a few tears?
Sure. Yeah, I even jotted down notes for what people can do for sure. Well, first and foremost, to anybody who's going to watch this or watching, and anybody who's thinking of giving of their time, that's great. Thank you. That's a wonderful gesture, first and foremost. I would fan out to a myriad of different organizations for lawyers across the country that are involved in I don't want to, not lobbying, persuading, but prodding the government to do something. So in terms of doing something concrete, email your MP, make a donation, go on the Canadian Bar Association site or any one of the myriad of wonderful organizations locally, federally, that are running something like the Pro Bono Initiative or something, CBA Find a Lawyer, offer your time, pro bono time, offer to do an intake consultation, fill out a form, anything. I think the start point is just connect likely with a credible organization that has already started RSS and refugee sponsorship training program, refugee sponsorship support program, Jackie. And so there's no lack of things for people to do. They just have to connect with those organizations, I would say.
Perfect. I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you, Robert. This was a little rough and tumble. We had, we started live and then
we're good with rough and tumble.
Connectivity on my end, we had to shift to a recording to wrap this up. But even though we weren't able to pull on questions from listeners the way we wanted to, I think that, if you really think carefully about what's happened to this individual and then think, what if I was in that position? What would I do? I think sometimes that can help us to put things into a larger frame that allows us to actually go forward and do something. So
of course.
Thanks so much for joining, and we will
Mark,
have links,
thanks to you. You're super cool. No surprise to me that you would devote, an episode of Immigration Nation to this, and on behalf of the Justice, you've been in touch with him. I mean, thank you.
Thanks, Robert. And for those of you who are wondering, how can I do these things? We'll make sure we've got some links in the description of the video. Click on those links. You can learn more and go forth. All right.
Super.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks
so much. Take care.
All right.